If you're thinking about buying a Triumph Scrambler 1200 or just want to know more about the bike, you're in the right place because this is part 2 of the most in-depth review ever. This part of my review is going to cover the not so great things that I've experienced with my Scrambler 1200 XE model and how I fix them to make my bike even better. Because let's face it, there's not a single bike on the market that's perfect for everyone straight off the showroom floor. Everyone has different things they like and dislike, and it's not your bike until you make it yours. Also, if you haven't seen parts 1 and 3, make sure you check them out after this, because there's important stuff I've covered in each video. One really important note, I'm not sponsored, and everything here is my own opinion based on my own experience. If you've got anything else you think I've missed or any questions, just throw it in the comments below. I try my best to answer every single comment or question that I get. Okay, let's get stuck into it. Okay, so the other half of Triumph's connectivity features is the navigation and GoPro connection. The GoPro connection is supposed to allow you to turn your camera on and off using the handlebar switches, but I checked the website this week and their tested products still only state the GoPro 7. And this stacks up because I couldn't connect a GoPro 9, a 10, a 360, and even with a GoPro 7, I had limited success getting connection, so I gave up. Let's just say it needs some work. Now, this isn't a huge problem, but I think it's worth noting. To use the navigation feature, you need to use the Triumph app. Now, I go on rides with people that own other brands of bikes all the time, and we share routes. So the first issue is that we can't really easily share routes between each other. I have tried importing GPX files or making my own routes in the Triumph app, but they ended up freezing or not working enough times, and sometimes it actually froze the directions on the TFT screen that I was relying on to navigate. That got me lost a couple of times and became pretty frustrating, so I just gave up. My advice would be just to use a quad lock and Google Maps, or if you're an off-road kind of person like me, I recently started using Riva. It's a motorbike specific app that you can use to search for, plan routes, on-road and off-road, plus you can see them in 3D, which is super helpful. And once you're done, you can save the GPX file in a bunch of different formats, or save it to the Riva app on your phone, put it up on the dash so you don't need phone coverage to see your maps. Now, the radiator overheating is something I've experienced myself and also seen others experience. It seems to have been happening mostly when people ride through deep clay or mud, or in my case, it was wet sand that clogged up the radiator fins on a very hot day. It's only ever happened to me once, and as soon as I cleared the block radiator fins using a unique method, don't try this at home, I stayed over 60 k's an hour in a higher gear to keep the revs low, and that was enough to get back home without overheating again. Once I got home, I topped up my coolant and it's never happened since. I've seen a few people fix this by putting their radiator guards on, high fender kits with longer rear guards, and a few other ways, but because it hasn't happened regularly to me, I've just left it alone for now and it's been fine. If you've had this problem and want to know how to change or top up your coolant, check out my video on that. There's a link in the description below. Okay, so most people find this out on the first drop of the bike. The handguards are mostly decorative and made of something not very strong. I personally dropped mine while static, and when it landed on a soft surface, the left guard crumpled like it was a twisty packet, and took my clutch lever with it, so I was not happy. The good news is that there's actually plenty of cheap fixes that still look good. One example is Barkbusters. I won't go into too much detail now, but I'll save that for a future video. Or if you like the streamlined look, I just removed mine completely and then I put bar end mirrors on. The Kelpie Customs fit really nicely and they actually fold in. So when you drop the bike, they absorb the drop rather than break. I've dropped mine probably 10 times with those mirrors on and I've only broken one. So they're pretty good quality. Okay, so exhaust heat is probably the #1 talked about issue that people have with the earlier models of the Scrambler 1200. And I agree it's a problem, but there are solutions to make it much more manageable, and I ride around in 35+ degrees Celsius heat in the summer. So firstly, it's worth noting Triumph have solved that in the second generation models which I think started from around 2022 onwards. They solved it by putting the catalytic converter in the rear mufflers instead of down under your right leg. But basically, unless you like your thighs extra crispy like the Colonel, one solution is to remove the cat completely, like I originally did, and there's a couple of other methods that I've seen out there. There's more details on that in my exhaust video. Also, some of you might have seen some videos from when I accidentally set my bike on fire, but I haven't really shared the story, so strap yourselves in. Here's a quick story. So when I removed the catalytic converter originally, I kept the stock mufflers and went on a big ride down through the hinterland to my hometown of Lennox Head. The plan was to go for a weekend adventure with the guys at Royal Enfield, Salt Creek Moto, and a couple of other legendary folks. Jeez, that was a good weekend. Just before I got to my destination though, I realized the bag I'd strapped on the back had caught on fire. I quickly managed to pull over, rip the burning bag off without damaging the bike, and then stomp out the fire. But I now had a smoking pile of ash for clothes. Moral of the story is, if you've got too much heat at the back, you need to be very careful of tying down bags and always make sure anything flammable is away from the exhaust. I think I mentioned that in my camping gear video, so check that out if you want to learn more about that. Okay, so this is probably the biggest single problem that I've had with the Scrambler. About a month before my warranty was up, I noticed a huge crack in my frame just on the left-hand cradle near the kickstand. Luckily for me, Triumph covered the repair under warranty, but when they ordered the part, they told me they had no estimated time of arrival, which meant that I could be waiting upwards of 12 months for the part. I was definitely not going to let my bike collect dust for 12 months or more. So I ended up getting my mate Kip, who's a really talented fabricator. He fabricates Porsches and things from scratch. It's crazy. If you want to check him out, his Instagram is Precious Metal. But basically, he helped me to weld the frame back together, and that held absolutely fine. So I rode the bike. I gradually built up the level of difficulty of stuff that I took the bike on just to make sure that the weld was going to hold, and it survived just fine. So basically the bike only got repaired about 3 weeks ago. That was partly my fault because I've been away for a few months, and my legend of a mate Jacob, also known as Moto Klaus on Instagram, took the bike into Triumph a few weeks ago, and now they've repaired it for me properly. Since I posted my video talking about the broken frame, a lot of people have actually mentioned that they had the same problem. So I hope this might be an issue that Triumph is going to address in future models and maybe come up with a part that retrofits to older models, because it seems like a weak spot in the design and has the potential to keep failing. So it's also worth noting there's plenty of riders that haven't had the issue, but either way you should check your bike regularly. There's more details on how to actually identify this problem in my broken frame video, so check that one out. So there's been a handful of other issues that people have experienced and mentioned that I should bring up, but I haven't experienced a lot of these myself, and I don't know all of the other contributing factors that might have gone into those cases. So I won't mention them here, but if you want to know more from an owner's perspective, I really suggest joining the Facebook group. I think it's called Triumph Scrambler 1200 XC/XE, and ask the owners that currently ride the bikes the problems they've had, because most people will tell you that it's the best bike they've ever had. Okay, so a bit of a spoiler alert here, I'm not selling the Scrambler. And this video review series has actually made me realize that after all these things, I still love this bike, and selling it has actually never even crossed my mind. That said, it might not be for everybody, and that's what I'm going to get into in the next video, where I talk about considerations and my final thoughts. So make sure you subscribe, because next week it's the last video of my long-term review.